So look, kia ora everybody. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. I appreciate it's budget afternoon in New Zealand. Penny, where 2 o'clock means that we find out how much money volunteering in New Zealand is going to get from the taxpayer. So we'll be celebrating, I'm sure, or more likely it'll be just another year of maybe next year. So we'll wait and see after this 30-minute webinar that we're very grateful to have Penny Harrison from Volunteering Red Cross with us. Penny, I'll introduce you briefly and then we'll let you jump into your slides. Penny has held senior strategic leadership positions with prominent international humanitarian and development organisations for over 15 years. Drawing on her experience working with locally based partners internationally in Australia, Penny is fostering collaboration among organisations, communities and governments, and through ensuring community participation in developing responses to complex needs. She's passionate about empowering people, groups and partner organisations to lead and advocate for the changes and improvements they seek. Penny's been with the Red Cross since 2016, December 2016, and I heard Penny speak in Kuala Lumpur last year and thought, wow, this is a keynote that we need to share with New Zealanders. So look, we're delighted and privileged to have you on the line, Penny. I'll hand it over to you. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon.
No worries. Thanks, Scott. And likewise, it was great to connect in Kuala Lumpur. And I think what that showed me beyond anything else is how common some of the opportunities and challenges are that we're all facing. So thanks very much for the introduction. I hold a role at Australian Red Cross called the Director of Volunteering, which has brought together the work of the organisation looking at volunteering, our membership work, and also the way that we are mobilising across other parts of the community. So this gives us a bit of a unique position, I think, for our organisation, and it's the first time that that's happened. So Australian Red Cross, as some of you may well be aware, we're one of 190 national societies around the world. We make up the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent, and we also have the International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, which makes up our movement. Here in Australia, we've got a really fantastic goal around building a diverse and active humanitarian movement. And two of the outcomes that I sponsor for Australian Red Cross are that we want to be a part of mobilising 2.5 million people to take voluntary humanitarian action, and that we want half of that 2.5 million to be self-organising. And that might seem a bit extreme, but we think ambition is good. Because one of the key messages here is that we certainly don't think that we can do it alone. And I think that's a shared view from the conversations Scott and I have certainly had. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the ideas that we have on the boil, which takes us right through the full spectrum of how we work with our current formal volunteers, right through to what else we can imagine into the future. So we did some research here at Australian Red Cross, which actually mirrors some government data and various other pieces of evidence academically written that have demonstrated to us that we now are confident 55% of Australians want to do more or do something good. So we've deliberately asked some questions around what does humanitarian action look like, not necessarily using the term volunteering, because we know that that term doesn't always capture the way in which people connect and interact with their communities. And this slide is really to illustrate, therefore, that with our ambitious goal of 2.5 million, we're putting our eyes up and saying that actually means there's 9 million Australians who are probably already doing some really extraordinary things, but they're also telling us they want to get more involved. So how do we understand what that looks like? And of course, this is in the backdrop, as many of you would be reading avidly as well, that the nature of work is changing. People want proximity to the sort of issue and cause that they're really passionate about. Technology is exponentially increasing and in fact changing almost every week. It's hard to keep up with. We know that technology has the power to connect, so it can be a really great way for people to do their acts of good, but equally it can be something that contributes to feelings of isolation and exclusion. So there's sort of double benefits with some of this. We also know from various millennial surveys, the Deloitte Millennial Survey, in fact the recent one just came out yesterday, and the Edelman Trust Barometer, indicating that young people feel that different sectors of our community have got more to do when it comes to doing good or acting ethically. And we also know that the for-purpose business sector is a growing area where employees connected to businesses have very different expectations of what those businesses can deliver and the way they play a part in community and doing good. So we've kind of taken all this mix of complexity and research and are saying to ourselves right now, well, we could either be overwhelmed by this or we can lean in and look at some other ideas of how we can be a part of mobilising people to do more, because as I say, that's what they've told us they want to do. But I guess in doing this, we're also very cognizant that this changes the nature of the relationship in some cases that Red Cross has had with people in our community. So what I'm going to do now is run through 3 examples of things that we've got in our pipeline of work to just give some illustrations of where our thinking is going, and then hopefully spark some questions through the webinar. So the first one is that we know as Australian Red Cross, we've got a base of about 30,000 members and volunteers involved with our organisation. If you go right down the right-hand end of this spectrum, this is where people are connecting with us because they want to be involved in something that's very reliable, that's repeatable, and that it's got really good controls around it. And this is where we would locate our formal structured volunteering. That will always be a vital part for how Australian Red Cross is going to operate. So that could be, for example, some of the volunteers who work with us in our justice programs. We want to make sure that they're well trained, they've got all the right checks, and that they're really well supported in engaging with those particular community groups. It's also some of our convener volunteers who actually manage groups of volunteers to make phone calls to older and isolated people around Australia. These are all the sorts of repeatable actions and where people are looking for a really, really strong connection with Australian Red Cross. But if we go right down the other end of the spectrum and go back to that comment I made about the sort of the 9 million Australians, some of them will absolutely be in the formal space, but we are getting really strong indications that people want to coalesce around their issues and causes. And that's where we see enormous opportunity to spark action, humanitarian action or doing good, don't know all the language yet, to act in different ways and create very different connections with Australian Red Cross. So what we've done is we've created a framework, a people taking action framework, and we're in the midst of testing it. And I'll give an example of what this currently looks like. But this is all about anchoring how we can support people to activate within local community on the issues and causes that are relevant to them and their communities. And for Australian Red Cross, very importantly, that's fundamentally anchored in our principles. So they're the kind of the no-go, can't pass go without adhering to the fundamental principles. But it is about us saying, well, what does decentralising power and control really need to look like? How do we coach or support people who want to step forward and take leadership, but not in the same way as a formal volunteer would? And what we've diagnosed is at the moment, we think there's 3 components, and it's not a linear relationship. You can enter in and out at any point in time that you want. But one part of it is that, you know, really action starts with me. It can be something really, really simple, like stopping to speak to people who are homeless and actually acknowledging people for being human beings and just giving a bit of empathy to understanding what's going on with them. But other people want to do something that is more connected because they realise they've got a shared interest. So what's the sorts of supports that they might need to run something within a community group, for example? And then perhaps there's other groups of people who just want to get involved in some really big, challenging issue. So examples that we've got going at the moment in the Get Connected space is over in northern Western Australia. We've got a group who is looking at setting up neighbourhood conversations to break down barriers between more advantaged and more disadvantaged areas. They sort of sit on the boundary of each other. Now, that's a really simple action. I'm sure there's great examples all over the world of where that's occurring. But because they've reached out to us, we've just been coaching them through, well, what could that look like and how might you go about it and where you could find the resources. On the mobilising scale, we're actually taking a bit more of a directed action sort of scope to this with a piece of work we're currently doing around loneliness. So loneliness is going to affect over 50% of the Australian population at some point in time. It's an experience, it's a perceived feeling that you can be lonely, and that there are known triggers as to why that happens. So we're in the midst of doing an activation around that to demonstrate that everyday Australians can play an impact, which is the sorts of networks around them. The next example I'm going to show you is a piece of work we're currently doing around corporate volunteering, where we think we need to radically rethink the current model. So move away from the 1 day per year volunteering, move much more into the view that employees and all of the people involved in an ecosystem of a corporate can actually be leveraged in very, very different ways. And this driver really does come from younger people who are saying they want to act on issues and causes that matter to them. They might be aligned to what the business's interests also are, but maybe they're not. So how could a corporate or a business actually activate in a way that creates the space for their employees and other parts of their network to act on the issues that matter to them? And this is about achieving scale. So we've got a current example where we're working with PricewaterhouseCoopers here in Australia in a collaboration with a number of other organisations. And it's about how they're going to activate their employee base on a couple of really big, complex social problems. And it's going to give their employees and other partners in their networks the space to come in and actually help actively problem solve, perhaps in ways that they haven't had the opportunity to do before. So this is very, very new thinking, and we're on a co-design journey with about 6 or 7 other corporate partners here in Australia, and really happy to keep sharing through you, Scott, where we land on this one. And then the final one, which I threw in, Scott, because you said you quite like this one and I love it too, which is we've been trying to think about how do we make taking action as easy, accessible, social and timely as possible. And one of the things that we think we need to do, which is using technology for good, is how might we be able to create a journey or curate an experience for people as they're moving around. You know, a lot of our data is geolocated, and if you're signed up with an organisation like ours or yours, depending on who's on the line, you've probably got some really great ideas of things that you would like to encourage people to get involved in. Might be your organisation, might be other community organisations. So we're trying to reimagine how we might get involved in helping people realise how easy it is to do very, very simple things on your train journey, when you're around with other social friends, how you can use your own channels and networks to activate others to do good. So look, Scott, I might leave it there and open out for questions. Hopefully that's given people some food for thought on the line.
Hey, thanks very much, Penny. So how we're going to do this is you should have the functionality on Zoom to raise your hand, and we'll be able to notice when you have raised your hand to allow you to talk. So you'll be able to use the microphone on your computer to raise a question with Penny on her content. Alternatively, feel free to use the chat function on your computer. So while we're waiting for any brave first souls to do that, oh, we've got our first one here. Hang on, we've got to figure out how to. So Helga, we'll get you on here. Allowed to talk. Sorry, Helga, you're using an older version of Zoom. I'm going to promote you to panelist so that you can get this functionality to work. Over to you, Helga.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, great. Hey, Penny, thanks for that. I had the pleasure of seeing you in Kuala Lumpur as well, but I liked your story so much that I wanted to listen to it again as well. So thank you for sharing it with a wider New Zealand audience today. I have a question around the first diagram you showed where on one hand you have the formal volunteers, on the other hand you have the kind of the more informal, you know, on their own backs type of volunteering. And I was wondering to what extent does Red Cross actually measure and support that happens basically on the left-hand side of the graph? And does that actually matter to Red Cross as well, what happens in that space? I was just wondering what you were thinking around that.
Thanks very much, Helga, and lovely to hear you again. And thanks for the conversations in Kuala. So does we see ourselves as Australian Red Cross as needing to be a part of the fabric of community, but that particularly means we actually need to be responsive to the way in which community members want to act and work on the issues that they are passionate about, and equally give us space to share our ideas about issues that we care a lot about. And I know that that might sound a little bit glib, but perhaps to illustrate it through the initiatives that we're talking about at the moment. So one, again, is around this conversation we're trying to stimulate around beat loneliness. So we've seen from evidence that this is something that is impacting the way in which community groups are connecting. And so we felt that as Red Cross, one of the things that we can lend to a conversation is our brand, our reach, and our ability to generate, I guess, spaces in which people can have conversations. But to do that, we're partnering with several universities here in Australia, including Swinburne University. So I guess what we're experiencing at the moment is that in the past, we probably put all of our time and attention into the formal volunteering space. And as I say, that's absolutely always going to be an essential part of it. But what we're missing out on is understanding what other parts of the community are concerned and worried about, and the ways in which they want to act, which are quite different. So I guess this is where we're beginning to test and learn ourselves what sort of role people might want us to play.
Very exciting.
Thanks, Helga. So look, next we've got a question from Felicity. Felicity asked over the chat function, would love to know more about the portable technology aspect. Is this an app?
Yes, thanks. I've just pulled up the chat screen too, so thanks, Scott, for that. I'm a little bit slow on technology myself. So where are we at with this? We are testing several different types of existing applications to see if we could add in a component that enables us to connect. And then secondly, as Australian Red Cross, we're actually rebuilding a part of our portal, so how people could sign up or connect with us in general. And once we've got that portal signed up, we think that that's going to enable us quite quickly to begin to interact with people using their existing devices. So it may not be that we need to build or use a different app. We may be able to use what we currently have. So we're in early testing. I know that there are so-called white label app products available at very low cost, and that may be something that we opt to test, and we would love to hear from other people who are testing in this environment as well.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Next, you might see in your chat function, Penny, that Aileen has asked us, can you please explain the role of anchors, as this could be a role for a volunteer centre? Aileen from Volunteer Wellington, a volunteer centre in the capital here.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm just going to flick back to the screen. So yes, for us at Red Cross, the anchors are really about the fundamental principles. So how we expect people to act and I guess behave with other members of their community. And so as an organisation who is always going to be impartial and neutral, that does mean that there are some sorts of actions that, let's say a particularly political action, for example, that we would be saying, well, actually there's other ways to go about doing that. So what we wanted to do with this framework is to minimise as much as possible the number of kind of rules that you need to have. So that's really what anchors mean to us. And I guess then great question for yourselves about what some of those anchors might be for a volunteer hub or other organisation.
Terrific. Next question, Penny, is from Chris Atkinson, which is another volunteer centre representative from Waikato, Hamilton. Chris asks, hi Penny, you mentioned several times changing the language around volunteering. Do you think the word volunteering no longer connects to a wide enough audience?
Yes, I do. And I think that we've done a number of pieces of research ourselves here. The Victorian government here in Australia has done research, and I guess looking across the scan of including things like some of the millennial surveys, some work that the International Federation has done, what we're hearing back is that people talk about their engagement within community in many different ways. And so volunteering for some people is incredibly important and very meaningful, and we need to hold on to that. I'm not advocating we lose it. It's just that we need to find other ways to stimulate other people to both recognise what they currently do as volunteering, if you like, but equally to actually mirror back in their own language the sort of conversations or actions they might be taking. So an example I can give is my own personal example. My son plays Australian rules football. He's part of a community club. The only reason that community club runs is because parents and families and other community members get involved. Now, what's been interesting for me to see is that there's a range of what I would describe as formal roles, including on management committees, right through to running the ground every Saturday and Sunday. But actually, there's a whole lot of informal roles. So when I started talking to parents and sort of saying, oh, hey, it's great that you're volunteering today. And they go, volunteering? No, I'm just the trainer. That's right. So it's that kind of, let's not apply language where it's not meaningful. Let's actually go to where people are at and begin to reflect back the stories and language that they're using.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Penny. In New Zealand, there's a bit of media attention at the moment in terms of unpaid labour being translated into volunteering. So it's the other end of the spectrum where we're getting the media say, oh, they're woofing, willingly working on organic farms. And so my sense is, hey, we've got to protect the sovereignty of that word volunteering, because if you clump it in with all unpaid labour, then we open up a different risk that volunteering loses some of its specialness in regards to the community engagement, the community involvement and buy-in. And so we take the opportunities to let those journalists know when we think that they're kind of using volunteering incorrectly. So, you know, it is a loaded term, isn't it?
And look, I'd agree. Here in Australia, we have formal internship programs. We've got volunteering in some cases pegged to returning from work for the dole schemes and so on. So it is pretty complicated. I guess, though, what we are hearing, and certainly some of the Victorian government's research, and I guess that's where the language of informal volunteering has come in. But still, the experience we're having is that doesn't resonate with how people understand what their role is. So when we've spoken to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community groups here in Australia, we did a research piece a couple of years ago. When we look at the Victorian government research, talking particularly with ethnic community councils, people don't affiliate what they do within community as volunteering, but they do have other really great ways of describing it. And I think we just haven't landed on what that should be. And I can see some great chats coming up saying this would be a really good session. I completely agree, because we are stumbling and tripping and trying to work out what are some of the ways that we can do this really effectively.
That's right. Penny, could I take you to your rethinking the corporate volunteering model slide there? And you know, we're talking about this at the board of Volunteering New Zealand, and in the respect that previously corporate volunteering has kind of been seen as a bit of an us versus them sort of mentality, in the sense that corporates will come in and do good for the day, and then they'll kind of pat themselves on the back and say, we've changed the world, thank you very much, now we'll go back and make all of our money. How do you approach the philosophy or the narrative that does answer your question about changing the nature of work impact through their employees? Any thoughts on that?
So I think we're just very early on with this, and we're very much building on the insights that we've been hearing from younger people. So I generally say that's people under the age of 30, about the changing way in which they want to interact with work also. So, you know, we can anticipate, I think, in the next 10 years that there will perhaps be more sorts of informal work. The concept of staying in a job for more than 5 years might be radically different, and we know from things like the Edelman Trust and the recent Deloitte survey that's just been formally released, people are expecting very different things from their corporates. So if you're going to work with a big corporate or a business, you've got people are saying that they've got some different expectations. They want more flexibility. They want to know that they're behaving ethically. They want to see them actually have a role in community. So I guess what we're trying to do is say, all right, so if those are the things that people are looking for, what does that then mean that corporates need to begin to adapt to? So we've obviously been through the curve of volunteering into the corporate social responsibility. And I guess we're thinking, so what's the transformation beyond that? And so this is the conversation that we've currently got to at the moment.
Yeah, great. Just going back to a previous question from Nicola Bow. Hi, Penny. I have a similar question around technology and innovation. Did you partner with others to help develop this for you?
Yes, we are partnering on almost everything that we do at the moment. So one example of that with the work that we've done on Beat Loneliness, in fact, we're partnering in the esports environment because anecdotally we had heard that esports is actually a space that is fostering a whole lot of levels of connection that hasn't happened before, and then people take that back out into their kind of face-to-face interacting environments. So from a technology point of view, that's kind of opening up a whole new world of what does gaming look like, how a game's designed, etc. In terms of the app itself and any of these concepts, absolutely, we take the approach of first looking at what's out there in the market, talking with people who have developed these so-called white label, which means that you can basically model and shape it. You've got the basic infrastructure already built, and then you can brand it and label it and add in your own functionality. But also, if we're looking to use existing tools that are also out in market, how can we then negotiate to get some license agreements and so on? So I think really anything and everything about technology requires partnership. We certainly don't want to create a capability that exists out there where others are specialising in this space.
Yeah, quite right. So we're bang on 2:30. Just one last comment from Jane Scripps is that this is giving words to our thinking of establishing compassionate communities. So that's great that, you know, we're able to cross the Australia-New Zealand divide through this webinar to engage on this really topical point. And, you know, as it's been mentioned, these are great perennial nuggets of the world in volunteering. Here we are from Lou. Final question. What is your view on people wanting to be involved in more short-term relationships? Do you consider this to be a problem? And this will be the last question. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Lou, for your question. No, I don't consider it to be a problem. And I think this is one of the trends that we've absolutely got to embrace. So questions we are asking ourselves, for example, is do we need all of our even structured or more formal volunteering roles to be done in the way that we've done them in the past? Could we break out shorter term projects or inputs into thinking or strategy or to delivering a process improvement? What are the multiple ways in which we could respond to how people want to give versus holding on to the way that has worked for us in the past? So we are, though, as I say, precursor to all of what I've said today, where I think we feel we're really at the beginnings of trying to explore how we're going to address some of these issues.
Hey, look, so Penny, thank you very much. We look forward to maybe picking this conversation up in another 6 to 12 months and hearing what's changed and the progress that you're making and the impact that Red Cross is having across Australia. So thank you very much again for your time and your expertise and sharing with us your development thus far. Thanks to our attendees for engaging with us in this webinar. We look forward to carrying on this format. It seems to work really well. And just a reminder that our next webinar is during National Volunteer Week. It's Thursday, June 21, and it's with Scott Usher, who's one of the managers at Statistics New Zealand. For everyone that's been wondering what the difference is between HLPF, GSS, TUS, census, there's all some of numbers that relate to volunteering. So Scott's going to decipher those with us and break down some of what that means for the domestic market over here, Penny. So you might want to tune in. But look, everyone else, thank you very much. We'll get that information out to you in due course. And this webinar will be available on our website probably tomorrow. So ka kite, ngā mihi, and kia ora katoa.
See you later.
Thank you.